Bruce, do you know where Emmett went? Oh, there he is. You can start.
I think so. I don't think it was open the meeting and then approve the 8:26 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. This is,
We're good to go when you guys are.
yeah, you guys are
Yeah.
recording?
We'll start that right now. Then took us off mute, right?
Emmett, you might want to be here because of the camera. The GNAT.
So you want us to report to the cloud? You want us to report to the cloud?
Yeah, you can record to the cloud or the computer.
Yeah, we've been recorded to the cloud, which commissioner there. Somebody got their
You guys said you need more wires.
I do. Yeah, I need big coils and coils.
Maybe some lights and but it was 75.
Welcome everyone to the South Londonderry Master Planning Adjunct Committee from the Planning Commission. It is a new Planning Commission, and so it's really kind of an independent thing, loosely associated but not associated with the Planning Commission. So, my name's Emmett Dunbar, and we are going to open this official meeting of the Solo South Londonderry Master Planning Committee. And the first order of business is to approve the agenda, which I believe we've all seen from Stevens. So all in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, okay. We got a little, there's like three of us, so And second order of our business of our committee is to approve our minutes from our 8:26 meeting, which I believe we've all reviewed. We all reviewed and approved the minutes from the 8:26, 2024.
And they're on the town website.
And they are on the town website. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, all right, little official business. So, and anyone here is welcome to come to the committee meetings when we have them, which we don't have a lot of them. We're posting them and letting people know. Mostly it's working with Stevens Associates, who I'm here to introduce. And I'm just trying to figure out the camera at all. So this is Taylor Shuda and Serenity. I was going to say Tiffany, but it's Serenity Wolf. I know Tiffany. And they are the professional designer, architects, engineers.
Yep.
Landscape architects.
Landscape architect, who have put together the work you're going to see. They'll talk more about it, as Mimi will too. I think that's from Brattleboro,
Yep.
Vermont. The office is in Brattleboro, Vermont. Where do you both live?
I live in Chesterfield, New Hampshire,
Okay.
just across the river.
I live in a little town called Shelburne Falls in Massachusetts.
Okay, great. Yes, I know them both. They're awesome. So it's good to have you here. And these are residents of Londonderry and South Londonderry and Weston and maybe beyond. And this is exciting. And Mimi?
I'm just going to do a recap to get everybody up to snuff. The South Londonderry Master Plan Project is funded by a planning commission that the planning commission initiated and the select board approved. And the municipal planning, what?
If you step a couple feet over, you can get on film. You're not on the, is she on?
It's a project by a planning commission initiated, select board approved municipal planning grant, and it is in collaboration with Stevens and Associates. The project commenced in early spring with the initial phase walk-around focused on and analyzing challenges and opportunities and defining the project area. The first community meeting was on April 24th with an excellent community turnout. The creative atmosphere was positive, informed, and productive. Residents shared their concerns, ideas, and visions for South Londonderry's future. There was consensus on a number of issues, and feedback was collected en masse. Stevens and Associates developed 3 initial concepts incorporating high-level visionary ideas and designing more immediately achievable projects. Continued feedback from the community has been and will be instrumental in redefining these evolving concepts. Efforts are ongoing to engage key town partners, including VTrans, Vermont DEC, EPA, Green Mountain Power, to integrate their input into the master plan. In the Stevens and Associates master plan, our goal is to create flexible scenarios to accommodate growth, meet resident needs, and attract new businesses to strengthen our tax base. The plan is not final and can be adjusted as needed at any time. By listening to residents, a comprehensive plan will be developed that can serve as a reference point or a template for future changes. The thinking is the development can be done in small, doable stages funded through grants and private investment. We are focusing on a village center that promotes walkability and connectivity, covers the wastewater study area, our historic district, and a mixed-use town center according to the bylaws, the present bylaws. It also maps existing businesses and residential properties and identifies the floodplain and floodway. Importantly, Stevens and Associates mapped key elements in our thinking about a master plan, South Londonderry's assets and opportunities, and our constraints and concerns. These maps can be viewed on the town website. Some of the immediate deliverables that were identified in previous resident meetings include a South Londonderry building inventory and status report, housing opportunities, and a sidewalk feasibility study, stimulating small businesses within the town and brainstorming about other potential businesses. Yeah, so that's the recap and the update.
I realize because it's your computer, not their computer, so I wasn't following.
Oh, no, it's that one.
Right. Oh, weird. All right. Well, sometimes that follows people around, but I guess it's not following people today.
So I'm gonna go up here by the screen, and I recognize a lot of you guys, so welcome back. Yeah, please. So since the last time we met, I believe we had a committee level meeting where we kind of reviewed these initial concepts, and then we took a break for the summer, and this is the first time we're reconvening back here again. So part of our concept development process is looking at things from a very zoomed out point of view. So we're doing a lot of these concepts, hand level kind of drawings, things that aren't looking final, that aren't super developed, just to kind of get the wheels churning. And so part of our process to look at different levels of development. So you start kind of very light, do things that are, you know, a little more achievable, easy to see. Then you dive in, go a little bit more moderate level of infill where things are changing, you know, and then you do a kind of heavy infill, which is something that's kind of dreaming a little bit bigger. It might be a lot further down the road, but something that you could see for the town. And so what we've done is we've developed 3 or 4 different concept options. And what we tried to do here, because the site is so dependent on the elevations and the river and everything, we developed a series of sections. So the section drawing is basically taking a slice and looking at it straight on, so you'll be able to see things more in 3D as well as just the bird's eye view for the concept. So it's a little bit easier to see, and that way we can kind of communicate what these changes will do to the flood elevations and things of that nature. And so I think we're right on track here. We're actually a little bit early, but I'm going to jump into these. And so we're going to go through like to get go through the concepts, and then we have a lot of time reserved at the end to go through questions, comments, and then near the end of the meeting, we're gonna try to do some kind of voting, where we have printed paper copies of these plans, and everyone can come up and kind of write on there what they think they like about these, what they don't like, and then everyone's gonna get a dot. That's their kind of favorite. And then after all this, we'll go back and compile this, and then kind of work on furthering these drawings more.
So I just want to speak to the folks who are online. For those of you who are online, we'd like to invite you to vote through the chat feature. So you can send a chat, and we're going to record what your votes are. And when we get to the voting portion, we'll give you some more information about how that'll work.
Can the online people hear us okay?
They're probably muted.
There we go. We got somebody who can hear us. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, thank you. All right, and if you don't mind going to the first. We can zoom in a little bit.
Would it be better if we turned off the lights? Or is this fine?
Because it's pulling from the,
That's
Yeah,
better.
that's
is
better.
that better? Okay.
Yeah, except I can't see Taylor, but that's all right.
You can't see.
Sorry, these files are kind of large. What we've tried to do too is we have paper copies on the easel there, and if we'll flip through these as the same time we're flipping through the slides, so if that's easier to see over there, we'll have those as an option too. So this is our base. This is existing conditions. This looks somewhat familiar from the last round of mapping that we did. So this is the main area that we're focusing on for this study. And what we've done here, as opposed to the other mapping that we produced before, is we zoomed in a little bit more, kind of focusing on this downtown area right here. And what that'll do is make it so that we can have a little bit, just a tiny bit more detail when you're kind of drawing these concepts up.
You want to point out the section line as
I
well?
do. So the sections I talked about before, essentially they're going to be looking through the post office and through the fire department building right here. So that all the sections that you see, they'll be from the same exact location, and that's, like I said, the post office, the street, and then through the fire department and down into the river slightly. Is there a way to make this brighter? So this is the first section that we have. So as you can see over on the left side of the screen is the post office building.
I don't want to mess anything up, but.
Okay. And then you walk out of the building, you have the street, you have a tiny little dip in the road, and then it goes up to the fire department building. And then from the fire department, it goes down to the river. Base flood elevation here is 1,045, so kind of remember that number when we're moving forward. So this section here is the river. This is measured to the ordinary high water mark. These next lines that come up through are the floodway. So a portion of the fire department building is in the actual floodway itself. And then the 100-year floodplain extends from that section where the floodway ends and goes across the street and hits a portion of the post office building. And then the 500-year floodplain extends slightly beyond what's on the screen here up on the hillside a little bit. Does anyone have any questions on that before we move forward?
So the red line, dotted line at the top is the base, what did you call it?
The base flood elevation.
Okay.
And so essentially, if you're doing new work, say you were proposing a new building there, what you're going to try to go for is the design flood elevation, which is typically 2 feet above the base flood elevation. So the first floor of a new building would be 2 feet above this line here. Just to kind of, and it kind of gives you a sense of how far below the buildings and the road are there now.
And that information is from the FEMA maps that they produce, so that we've basically superimpose that onto this cross section so that you can kind of understand what the map in sort of plan view means in a vertical relationship to your existing infrastructure.
Right. And sorry, these are different size sheets back and forth. And can everyone see these okay? So what we did here is, the way we're able to draw these, it looks like there's almost like a sheet of trace over this aerial, so it kind of makes the background a little bit fuzzier, and you can make the proposed line work pop a lot more. Serena, do you mind flipping that sheet over so we're on the same one? So option one, like I said, this is the lightest amount of infill, and so light infill and streetscape improvements here, and trying to make some pedestrian connections. So coming down Route 100 here, we have a plaza space here, a formal parking area. There's sidewalks along this street here to connect to the homes. Coming across the bridge, the four-way intersection by the country store is more formalized. There's crosswalks on all four corners. And coming down the main street, we have a tree planting along the edge. Tried to narrow up the street a little bit and add some parallel parking on one side as well as sidewalks, and we looked for areas where we could find formalize more parking to give you more parking down in the downtown area there. And where we could, we tried to extend the sidewalks, parking, and tree plantings. And the reason for this is really just to slow down the traffic on this road and make it have more of a downtown feel, give you more places to park, give you some more green space, potentially let you access the use of the river better, things like that. And then we've also added sidewalk connections up this Middletown Road, along the loop here and back down. And if you go to the next slide, the next slide is a section, the same thing again. And if you can zoom in a tiny bit more. So what we're looking at here, and this is an example of what that section would look like. So you'd have it coming out of the post office, you'd have a small little green space, you'd have an 8-foot sidewalk, which is quite generous to walk on. The parking and tree belt that you had seen there previously, so that where possible kind of doubles as either parking spaces or planting space. And that really breaks up the sidewalk from the road and actually makes you feel much safer when you're on the sidewalk and in front of the businesses. And then the road is narrowed down to 20 feet. And by having the parking and the road narrowed, it really encourages people to drive much slower through that area. And then there's curbed on both ends, so you also have a vertical grade change that separates the pedestrian space from the vehicle space. And similar coming through, the fire department is still there, and then down to the river.
Is the width, the 8-foot width of a sidewalk for two-way traffic?
Yes, thank you.
And is that a state mandate, or is?
No, that's, it's a very comfortable walking experience
Okay.
on that. And then a lot of the times too, when you're in areas like this, that also incorporates a utility strip too. So you have things like your telephone poles, signs, things like that.
Street lights.
Exactly, that are kind of out of your circulation path. And so this, just to go through the numbers really quick, we created, by doing this, we created 51 new formal parking spots for the downtown area. There's a meeting space and parking by the West River Trail building, and then there was some infill buildings at the Middletown Road intersection. And what I mean by that is that we're looking at areas where you could potentially put a new building in to reinforce the downtown area.
Could you go back to the map that showed the Middletown Road area?
Yep.
And where those buildings were? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, so the infill buildings were here coming up the street, and then one right here as well.
And the West River Trail building, just point
Yep,
that out.
right there, and then there's a plaza space over here. Pedestrian connections across the bridge over to here, a formal parking space here.
Great.
And we can go, once we get through these, we can go back and forth all of them and answer any questions or anything.
Quick question.
Yep.
Are there 2 sidewalks going up Middletown? One on either side?
Yes.
And Londonderry Inn was asking for sidewalks. Is there any way for them to get down safely to the bridge?
We can look at that. I believe that's addressed in the next plan.
Okay.
And if not, we will look at that. So this next one, and as I said before, we're kind of moving into the moderate level of infill now. So a little bit bigger leap here. Bless you. And there's a couple things that you're going to see here that are a little different and a bigger change. What we're proposing here is to move the fire department building essentially out of the floodway because it's in an emergency service in the floodway. It's not the most ideal. And then what we're focusing on in this plan is pedestrian connections. So what we're trying to do here is looking at adding a pedestrian bridge that kind of connects these two intersections here in these streets. And then, so you will have numerous walking loops throughout the downtown with traffic calming and more parking. And what we tried to do here was pull all the parking off the street so we could give more pedestrian space. So look to add a lot back here. There's now a loop up to the town hall, across both sides of the street here. And then with the fire department building gone in this space, you're able to have a much larger outdoor space against the river, potentially a new town center, plaza space, and then park space along each corner of the bridge, and then plaza space down here at the bottom. And starting, we got someone trying to join.
By plaza space, you mean what? What's the definition of plaza space?
So it can mean a lot of things. It could be kind of, you know, a path or an outdoor gathering space, something like that. It could be a place where you have a farmer's market. It could be something, space that the town can use, essentially. At this kind of zoomed out level, we're not really programming it, but it's usable outdoor space that's centrally located.
Great.
And it usually has some sort of hardscaping, so that it is easily usable for a variety of needs. Taylor, we have a question from online. It says, are there plans for a 4-way stop at Routes 100 and West River?
Route 100 and West River. So in this scenario, yes, I believe there is. Or the next one, it's one more. Sorry, I'm a bit rusty. We took that.
Taylor?
Yep.
I see it across from the West River building, which we call the depot. There's Forbes Construction, and now
Yep.
you're making that a green space.
Yes.
So, so they'll
Thank you.
have to move too?
Yep.
Okay. Because, yeah, they do flood too, I guess. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the idea to place the rescue squad, fire?
So
We don't have a proposed location for that because we feel like that's a separate study that the town should look at. Where is an appropriate place to place your fire station so that it has adequate response times to the properties that it serves, as well as, you know, in this particular situation, we've just looked at the floodplain. There are other factors that you need to consider when siting a fire station, like capacity for water, other potential accessibility issues for roads. And so that citing the new location for the fire station isn't part of this study, but we've encouraged the planning commission to consider taking that study on.
And we're not the planning commission.
Oh, I apologize.
One proposal, just to get on camera, I guess, I've heard that makes sense to me is move the fire station to where the town road crew is now, up down below the town hall, down, not the town hall, but the town office building. And then they move over to the Proudy property. So that's long-term, but to me, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people agree, I think.
and I did want to correct that. This was not a 4-way stop down here. There was just the addition of crosswalks down there. to help slow people down at the bottom of the hill. The focus of this plan is park space and walking loops. And trying to find off-street parking where possible.
So there's a walking loop off of that large parking lot behind the post office area and coming back to Middletown. There's two on the left side of the bridge, one's sort of a V shape and one's just sort of a long, those are walking loops.
Which one are you talking about?
To the left of the bridge.
Yeah, that's some kind of park space path cutting through there.
Yeah, there
Yep.
is one on the upper where that B is. It just, from my perspective, it looks like it's in the river, but that's not true.
No,
No,
it's
on that bank.
it's on the bank there.
Yeah,
It's kind
okay.
of where the space is
Yeah.
now.
So is the idea to continue up to the town hall?
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense.
So question?
Yep.
And it might depend on the scenario, which slide we're looking at. What is proposed here, when the next flood comes, would any infrastructure disappear and go down the river?
Yes. And it's a great question. And we're gonna address that in the next one, what that would look like. Serena, do you mind jumping over to the next section here?
I just want to recognize that Ron suggested putting a four-way at 100 and West River. So Ron, I wanted to let you know I'm putting that in the notes as a suggestion that was made.
And so for this option, this is the section looking at, again, through the post office, through the street, and where the old fire department used to be. It's hard to see, but you can see in the back the outline of the old fire department building there. So you walk out of the post office, there's a small planting bed, a sidewalk, a narrowed down road, and then a park space here with views over to the river. And so that would kind of be the typical section looking on that street there.
So where the most severe flooding is, you propose these parks or
Right.
community
Yes.
spaces.
Yep, exactly. One of the most useful things for the flood zones is outdoor park space, because there's not a lot of infrastructure or buildings within them.
And I'm assuming there's also guidelines for building within a floodway.
Yeah, it's
Um,
kind of a no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about in the floodplain?
So that is possible as well,
Mm-hmm.
building within the floodplain. What you try not to do is any kind of new structures or things like that are considered almost dams. So it causes more flooding upstream of them. And so a lot of the times you're providing areas where you can call it compensatory storage, where you can store this water that would be displaced by adding a structure within it. And then as well as having the buildings built above the BFE, the base flood elevation.
So what Londonderry, South Londonderry really wants to do is build up towards the Londonderry Inn and up Middletown and up
Yep.
towards the town offices to get out of that floodplain.
Right. So the next concept here, this is the heaviest amount of infill, and this is kind of the most dream big one. So what we're doing here, and I think Stern, you can zoom in a little bit on this. So after the last community meeting we had, one of the biggest concerns was the truck traffic coming down the hill, the vehicle speeds, and being able to make Main Street more habitable for pedestrians. So we looked at the idea of moving the Route 100 bridge, and a couple of reasons that we did this. And the main one being the flood. If you look at the flood mapping, the bridge is and the abutments are almost acting like a dam, and you see a large swell after the bridge where the floodway and floodplains actually grows after the bridge. And so we believe that it's not sized right.
It's not sized as large as it could be, so to reduce flooding impacts. So part of what you guys saw from those cross sections that Taylor shared is that the base flood elevation is so high compared to all of your existing infrastructure in your village that really the first thing when we're looking at resilience for a town is how can we reduce the base flood elevations before we start looking at how do we do flood proofing or how do we elevate. The first thing is how can we reduce the base flood elevation? And to reduce base flood elevation, we need to look at things like upsizing bridges, upsizing culverts, providing additional compensatory storage within the floodplain, doing floodplain restoration projects that add capacity to the river. And that will, by giving land back to the river, it's going to reduce the base flood elevation. So that's the thought process behind this option is instead of looking at just how do we move everything up the hill, are there other projects that you could take on? And I believe that the town is participating in a program through the state called the Rivers Project that is looking at some of these with Stone Environmental to look at how can you reduce your base flood elevations to perhaps preserve some of the historic infrastructure that you guys have in this village.
So the thought on this plan was to raise some of the core buildings in the downtown above the base flood elevation and move the Route 100 bridge slightly to the west. And what this will do is really force vehicle traffic to slow down coming down through the town here. So as you're coming down 100, you're coming to a true T right here, taking a left, crossing the bridge, and then coming down the street. Is there any way you can move that to the side over here?
That's what I was trying to figure out, if I could scroll as well, and I'm not. I'll move it up. Nope.
That works. And as you can see, Middletown Road being realigned, coming down the hill to straighten out with the bridge here. And these areas kind of with the rough edges and the slashing through them, those are areas of compensatory storage. So giving the river more room. And Serena, if you don't mind, go into the section really quick, because the section helps to illustrate what we're.
Yeah, so I just, in particular to Ron from on Zoom, this intersection was something that we really considered because we heard in previous community outreach that the intersection with West River and Route 100 is very dangerous. And so by separating it from the bridge so it doesn't feel as much of like a through road, it forces a T intersection, which creates a more natural stopping location. So that was another thought process when we were looking at this, is how do we create a stopping location to reduce traffic speeds through the South Village?
I have a question.
Of course.
Have you taken into consideration that the water spreads out north of the bridge and then it funnels down because everything narrows up in that section? So you have all of that water that has spread out north of there that then is forced into that narrow section, and moving the bridge isn't gonna do anything different. And also, the way you're reconfiguring the road, we have tractor trailers going through. That's how products move in Vermont. And that is gonna just make a dangerous intersection because they have to turn wide, and
Right.
it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm not an engineer, but common sense just tells me that doesn't work.
I appreciate the comment, thank you.
I'm writing that down. I
Yeah.
will say to your point about the bridge, like you said, moving it is not going to be enough. What has to happen is they actually have to make it larger. They have to open, excuse me, let me just let this person in. They need to make the opening larger, like you said. And if you look at the flood maps, you'll see it's almost like an hourglass shape to the flood lines, that it is getting pinched by the bridge, which again goes back to the bridge needs to be larger to allow the river the space it needs to flow through.
I don't, again, there used to be a mill where you're gonna put that new bridge, and again, they relied on the water for power.
Yes.
back in the day.
Yeah.
So that's why it was that way, and I still think, going down, it's still gonna reach the banks, and I don't think the bridge is gonna make a difference.
That's fair, and I would say, like I said, about the fire station siting study, there's pieces that are beyond the scope of this study, and I would say looking at the potential reductions in BFE is not something that we cover in this, but like the Rivers Program project, it's possible that that might be something Stone could look at for you guys, or that you could seek additional information. Because if increasing the size, there's a trade-off. You can increase the size of the bridge, but if the natural banks are still tight, like you're talking about, you might not get adequate reduction in BFE to make it worth your time or investment.
Is there room enough at the T of 100, having a roundabout there? A flat roundabout so you could drive across, in other words, you could,
Maybe the problem with
Drive
roundabouts
across
is
it.
they need to be really big and really flat.
yeah,
And we don't really have a ton of real estate for that
Yeah.
here. I think you'd be kind of looking into taking, potentially.
yeah. It didn't
So
seem like it.
one,
Sorry, I missed that because I was taking notes. Which intersection were you looking at?
Of 100 coming down at the West River there.
Okay.
and then one other idea in this too is the compensatory storage, which once we go to the slide with this section, it's giving more space on the bank for the river to flood without anything in it.
We're also changing Middletown Road with this concept. So you're eliminating the houses you proposed from the last drawing.
Yeah. Which in turn is creating more space at the bottom, which is where the Middletown Road is now.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of them is a foundation, or actually even two of them, I think, are
Yeah.
foundations, and there's one house.
Yep.
That's, I don't know the status of it, the condition, but it's shaky.
Do you mind going to the section?
Could you enlarge the bridge and leaving it where it is and
Yeah.
enlarge the banks? Would that help the river?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an option there as well, especially if the fire station is relocated. So when you're looking to give land back to the river, it is about what are you giving back? What's right immediately adjacent to it? So. This scenario takes out the fire station as well as, I think there's another building right next to it. It takes out all of these buildings right adjacent to the river, as well as this building on the other side of the river, the construction folks that I believe Bruce mentioned, and then it utilizes this area over here. So by giving that space back to the river, reducing the elevation of the ground in that area, that helps open up storage and capacity in the river. As you said, I don't know that that's enough. That's an analysis that would need to be looked at.
It's a pretty steep
Bank.
bank
Yeah.
down over there. And the construction is on the right side.
This
Yes,
right
that's
here. I
Ford's
apologize.
construction. And you've got parking for the tenement house that's in that proposed bridge, new bridge.
Right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another house, that they park on that side of the road too.
Yeah.
And their houses are not in the floodplain.
Do you want to look at the
But
cross
with
section?
the elevation, you can see what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
see where the two buildings were before. It
Yep.
just allows a place for the river to go.
So you're cutting into the bank, allowing the river space to flood, that's not gonna damage anything. And then in turn, raising the building up. So this is what we said earlier was the design flood elevation. So this the building of the post office now is 2 feet, the first floor is 2 feet above the BFE here. And you can see this, you know, these haven't changed. And then you have the compensatory storage and then kind of making everything a little bit higher to get out of it.
So I will say in this scenario that we sketched, this is using the BFE that we know. So back to how much could the BFE be reduced with changes to the bridge? This does not take that into account. This just says, using the flood elevation that we have, how much would you need to raise the buildings? And like, I think it's about 5 feet, is that what it was? Basically the existing road elevation.
Something like that, yeah.
To the base flood elevation. You know, if the bridge and compensatory storage was provided, maybe you'll get a foot or 2 feet. I don't think you're gonna get 5 feet. I think that there is still gonna need to be a combination of compensatory storage, increasing bridge size, and as well as raising existing historic structures.
And then we did do one more sketch about moving the bridge to a different location as well, if you guys want to see it.
can't wait.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think you're gonna have to paw it over a little bit.
I'm gonna find my mouse first.
Oh, yeah. There it is.
Oh, come on.
Interesting.
Is there any way you can move that thing out of the way? Sorry. So in this scenario, and I'm sorry, this is really almost off the page. What we look to do is when you're coming down 100, make this more of a curve here, and then as you're coming into down this street a little bit further, put the bridge here. And what this does is allows it to be a true 90-degree turn and then into a true 4-way stop here before you can go up Crescent or down 100. So trying to pull a majority of the Route 100 traffic away from this downtown area was the thought on this one. I know you would still have a lot of the truck traffic going down to the gravel pit area, but you're pulling a majority of the Route 100 traffic away from the downtown and creating a much less vehicle traffic in a downtown space. And with that, that's kind of an overview of all the concepts, and so I'm hoping to open it up to questions, discussion about all of them. Yes?
I have a question. How does the wastewater project coordinate with this?
So we are, this study area here is what is within the wastewater treatment study area. And so we were shared that report when we first started this, so we made sure kind of we were operating within those limits as well, so any improvements would be able to access that wastewater treatment plant. But it's kind of out of our zone of study. I believe they are going up to the north.
Property, right?
Yeah, the Prouty property. But they will.
Is that where it's gonna end up? So it's not necessarily South Londonderry?
But it will service
Oh, okay.
South Londonderry.
So all these plans you're saying don't interfere with that plan?
No.
Right.
I think they would kind of, they're a little bit different, you know, they're kind of looking a little bit more technically at this than we are, but this area down here that we're focusing on would be served by that new system. I hope that helps answer. Yes?
Are these map drawings, are they on the internet somewhere so we can pull them up and look at them?
Not yet, but we will share them with the town after this meeting, and you can leave on the website.
Yeah.
It'll be on the town website after.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have a very awkward question. You did a great study and proposal for the North Village, which has been totally shelved by the select board. And my fear is, again, these are all conceptual. These are a place to start. Do we have buy-in from the select board to continue to move forward if you come up with a plan? Because
So, yeah.
it's very frustrating to have seen such a great outline of conceptual ideas for changing the North Village, but it's been totally shelved.
Okay. What we're gonna, I don't have an answer for that, but I can tell you what our next steps are, and hopefully that helps. So essentially, after this, we're gonna vote, get everyone's opinion here, and go back and refine these again, and then reshare our plan with the committee. And then from there, we issue a final report, kind of stating all of our findings throughout this whole process, all the public input, and hopefully have a plan that's very reflective of what everyone's looking for this area. And from there, it's kind of up to the town to keep moving forward with it, or to want to dig into it more, to develop further, refine further.
So we will present that final plan to the select board, and then it is kind of on the community to work with your local leaders to continue to move these forward. I know that there are a variety of different planning grants available to look into different opportunities. I know if you can get plans put together, there's opportunities for grants to implement some of these things, to do engineering drawings and to help with construction. But that is something that, your planning commission and your select board needs to kind of pick up after this study finishes.
As far as the solo master plan committee project is, as all things should be, it would be great if there was something after the work was done and the time and money is spent. So we've identified a few deliverables that we can deliver beyond these ideas, schematics, plans, which are, one is a building inventory study of the buildings in South Londonderry, in the village. Where are they at? What's going on with them? Who owns them? Are they lived in? Are they not lived in? Are they in probate? Are they for sale? Are they underdeveloped? Are they hooking up to wastewater? So a comprehensive building study will come out of this group, what we're attempting to do. Another one is, with help from this, but beyond this, and with help from the state, is a sidewalk and street calming study for the South Village, which will exist. And then also the third and fourth, which are more a little bit higher, but reaching out to, working with current business owners, in the commercial district, as the proposed zoning bylaws that were proposed and the future ones, most likely, the maps are shifting and changing and trying to increase the mixed-use village district for the north and south villages to create and hopefully offer more economic development opportunity, community development opportunity through commercial uses and mixed uses. And so that is a conversation to have with people about, what kind of businesses would people want, what kind of things could happen in that way. And then the fourth thing would be to come up with a timeline and potentially put out over 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, what kind of things could potentially happen in the South Village with the data from those studies, that research from grant monies. And so it was very important for me, if I was going to get involved, for there to be deliverables that were actual things, because it's totally clear that this is an important thing to do for a community, but if you don't have leadership that wants to do it, or you can't find the money even if the leadership wants to do it, then things won't happen. So say none of this happens. At least we have a current understanding of what's going on with the buildings, the assets in our village. We can try to do traffic calming with the increased truck traffic and automobile traffic, and a raise of we have about a 20% increase in population since COVID, so there's more people on the streets and more people walking around and biking and doing things. So those things can come out of this, and they're totally unbiased, non-political, and positive. And then the political structure and our government structure in the state of Vermont allows us to vote at every town meeting for our elected officials, and we can also do a petition process and get a certain percentage of the town to have the removal of any town leader in any position in our town and every town in the state of Vermont. So we have vehicles beyond what we're doing here in research to also change our leadership through our regular town meeting voting process, and even beyond that through petition and removal.
Can you also talk about your idea that if you have an idea and we agree to it, one grant will lead to the next.
Oh, right. The whole aspect of how we need to do this now and the timeline is very important because, you get one piece of money, which leverages another piece of money, it's another, and so from state government grants or foundation grants or individual donors, whatever it may be, if we get some money, we have the money to do this, and then we get some money to do a sidewalk study, and then all of a sudden there's an opportunity to have monies to do more with sidewalks, and then someone says, well, how are we gonna maintain the sidewalks? And then someone in town, before they die, they decide to leave $200,000 for the maintenance of sidewalks. And the perfect example of that are our streetlights. The streetlights in South Londonderry are from a fund from an individual who left the money, I believe, a long time ago, along as well as many of our parks have, and the Janeways who created the library. So you can endow things, you can create money and have money for things over time through understanding what you want to do and matching those monies, making the effort to make a plan, to build something, to find the money, and then ask for more money after you're gone for our children and our grandchildren. And that's what we're doing, and it's entirely positive. And that's all we're trying to do is just to be positive.
I would also add to that by taking the time, the Londonderry population is incredibly invested. I love the fact that when we've done these studies, folks turn up, you turn up well, you have really good thoughts, really good insights to bring to the table. And by investing in work like this, you create positive momentum. And, at the beginning of this study, I shared with the task force here that because of the work that you did in North Londonderry, our firm had been approached by 2 separate developers about how do they get invested in Londonderry, looking at opportunities for development here. So I know it is challenging and the timeline for these feels a little bit more glacial perhaps than immediate, but it does signal to other folks and it provides a framework for what you want to do with your community that does attract attention from outside your community as well.
I think the other big concern is the flooding. It's going to happen again and again, and probably on a more frequent basis. And some of the things that you were suggesting, like compensatory storage and that sort of thing, is so important. It could be 7 years down the road, 5 years down the road, we have another big flood. So if we don't get going, there's not going to be much left of our towns or villages.
Yeah, I did have a particular question, and probably best seen by this illustration here. Every time you've got a bridge, you kind of take a 90-degree shot right across the river, as opposed to, twisting it one way. If you looked at it in terms of how can you just connect Route 100 so that it's a smooth,
kind of like that.
Yeah. What did you? And I'm not saying that's a good idea or not, but did you consider anything like that?
I think
We did, I'll be honest, we did not, typically because bridges are so expensive. The reason they go perpendicular is to minimize the cost of the bridge.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So we did not look at that, I'll be really honest.
I guess I could figure that out. Hooking 100 to Middletown Road or to Crescent Road is kind of, what are we doing?
Yeah, we're part of this is just kind of looking at things that you might not have thought were possible, seeing something sticks, and hearing that things don't work is just as important as hearing things that do work.
Yeah.
And at the end, what we hope to get from you guys today is, and we'll have the voting in a bit, we want to hear, take the elements that are good from each plan, that you like from each plan, and then we're going to try to knit those together into one final plan at the end. We know that not one of these plans is the perfect plan for you. And like I said, option 3 is really to try to push the envelope to make you think about things that you would have previously considered constraints, like the bridge location. Moving the bridge might not be the right answer, but we wanted you to at least consider that and then look at the 3 different plans and say, okay, this is the best part of plan A, this is the best part of plan B, and how do we knit those together? And that'll be our task after this meeting.
And just a couple points. One, that we looked into a little bit. One is that the bridge is actually very old. And the bridge is on the list with the state to have significant work done or be replaced in 10 to 20 years. Now, that could be 20 to 30 years, I suppose, but it's not as if it was just built. And so doing this is not that pie in the sky when you think about the fact that the state has it on a list already coming up. So they're already thinking we better budget for this bridge because it's a decade or two away. So they're already thinking about it in some capacity. The other thing is that if the most important thing to do, in my mind, living in South Londonderry and raising a child there, would be to have crosswalks in the village. You cannot have crosswalks if you don't have sidewalks. So we can't have any crosswalks at those intersections if that's the first thing we want to do without sidewalks. So hence why we thought, well, the sidewalk study is really important. And if we want to achieve people crossing the street safely, we have to have sidewalks. And lastly, the sidewalk I used as a child, there's a section of it that's still there at the base of the press where Tad, who owned Jake's, lives, the yellow building, the old newspaper press. The sidewalk is there, it is visible. I went 2 weeks ago, I looked at it, I walked on it, it's there. So we have sidewalks, there's just a few feet and it's hard to tell. But they have existed, they are there, and we have something to work from.
So that relates to Ron's comment here online. He asks, the commercial zoning goes up to Melody Hill. Would the sidewalk and street parking plans extend to that part of town?
Maybe go to 2.
I think it's outside of our
I believe it is.
perimeter.
So Ron, I think that this is outside the area that we're looking at. So does that help answer the question? Is this example?
Well, I think at one point, there was a walking trail that went from where the bridge, the pedestrian bridge is, up towards where the credit union is, creating that loop. And I think the only thing that comes out of this is the placement of parking, the sidewalks and crosswalks, and these pedestrian loops. That would be a big plus to the town as far as circulation and that somebody could walk to get places as opposed to drive.
Yes.
I think sidewalks and a crosswalk would really help children that get off the bus there.
Okay.
Because that's a popular bus stop.
Can you show me where the bus stop is? Can you
On
point-
either end of the bridge.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they stop at both, but a lot of parents, and whoever's picking the kids up, use the store to park there. And the
Okay.
bus comes and goes all directions here. The bus route changes all the time, and there's a high school and a middle school bus. So, but it goes all directions through the intersection. The tricky thing about the walkway from West River Street and the depot over that pedestrian bridge is how steep it is. I think we all know how steep it is. So some sort of switchback thing or something, and it's a major highway with a guardrail,
Right.
it drops right off. I mean, having like a switchback path from the depot to the Heritage Family Credit Union, which also allowed you to cross over to Melody Hill and to those residents and the inn would be wonderful, but it is so steep, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of stairs or a lot of switchbacks or. Yep, Bruce.
After the first public meeting, I did talk to people, the construction workers, the people that take care of the bridge and the roads, and also one of the engineers, whose name I always forget. But they all would love to see the bridge, at least the surface of it being fixed up. Because, they gotta repair it all the time. The structure is okay, But it is an old bridge, it's not the most pretty, you know, it is restrictive for the water, so there's a lot of reasons. But they said, you know, it's not even on the, I mean, somewhere along the line, it's on the state plan that nothing immediate, which means nothing in the next 5 years. But it has been instances where the state legislature or our local state representatives get involved and all of a sudden it's a high priority. So there's hope.
Thank you.
And as far as moving it goes, I have to think about it. I think it probably is a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to be negative, but I've lived here all my life, and I'm just going to run through some of the businesses here, but growing up in the 60s, the sidewalks was in place and they was used a lot. And just a few of the businesses really within the scope of your map is that we had 2 garages in town. We had 2 hotels. We had 2 stores, a state liquor store. We had a grain store, which was part of a sports shop as well.
What was
A
that?
hardware store, the post office.
Yeah.
The grain store.
The grain store. We also had a grade school where our town office is.
Yeah.
So we all had to walk to school. So there was a huge amount of traffic as well as pedestrian traffic. And I don't see that now. It's not,
Yeah.
we don't have the traffic that we used to by any means.
And are you saying both vehicular and pedestrian traffic?
Both.
Okay.
Because of the hotels, the Peabody House,
Yeah.
the garages, the school.
It was the
Yeah.
beginning of the ski areas coming in, so it was,
You know, Dr. Pingree had a office, barber shop.
Yeah.
But Peter, can I ask, a lot of people use Thompsonburg Road that did not use it in those days.
Which is true, that was a dirt road.
Yeah.
Which one, Thompsonburg?
yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed in the North Village, which also had sidewalks at one point, if you look at historical pictures, you don't see anybody walking. And kids can't walk because they take their life in their hands.
Thank
Even
you.
adults take their life in their hands.
I think Londonderry has more traffic because of Route 11. South Londonderry, I walk down to the post office a lot. I haven't had any trouble with, you don't get as much traffic on Route 100, I don't think. Not like Route 11.
Okay.
But that might change when
Well, it's already
we get the
changed.
wastewater going and people, maybe businesses will come back.
It's already
It might
changed.
It's
come
getting
back.
so limited though, that
And we get a lot of
wastewater.
traffic on Middletown.
Yeah, because
too.
people are cutting
People
through there
just-
because of Google
Yeah.
Maps.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's really not much faster. I've gone both ways and I've
So
followed cars and
Yeah.
meet
I was
the
just
car going
thinking, a
Middletown
lot of the
and
hunter
around.
trucks come down there, right? And so if you make that, the road smaller, then go slower, and then that's gonna make like traffic jams or something.
They go way too fast.
Potentially.
Well, I don't know, I'm just wondering how that all, you know.
Yeah, they're not signalized, it'd be stop signs we're proposing here.
Yeah.
If it came to it, you know, it could potentially be signalized, but at the time, it's just looking at kind of really slowing the vehicles down. And, which is hard because it's at the bottom of a hill.
Quick question about the pedestrian bridge, is that flood resilient? Can it be raised in high water activity or something? What's the concept for that one? Because it's a great idea, I love the idea.
I mean, I think first and foremost was just getting a spot which would be a good place to cross. We haven't really spent a lot of time designing it, but you know, if you're putting a new structure in there now and spending the money on it, it would be something that is climate resilient.
And there used to be pedestrian bridges
there was.
across.
Right.
But down, further down,
Yep.
They had the bridges.
And so in this idea too, what we were really focusing on was getting people
The right.
park space by the river, access to the river
Yeah.
was a huge concern in our last community meeting. And then spaces to walk and do loops downtown in the flat areas too. And so that's what kind of this plan is looking to address.
I think with the parking, the sidewalks, the pedestrian, all this circulation, it makes, to me, it's making it more of an attractive town to put a business in.
Right,
Because pedestrian traffic people window shop,
right, exactly.
and as opposed to just driving to a destination.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not just businesses, housing to attract more businesses, more
Right.
people, exactly.
Toby Fitch, did you have something that you wanted to add?
No.
Okay, I just heard you talking and I wanted to make sure you had
I'm
an
sorry,
opportunity.
it was not muted, sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you weren't trying to get something in there.
So did anyone else have anything else, things they liked, things they didn't like?
Just that it's gotta be thinking forward for floods, and that has to be number one. Just whatever you do makes sense with a flood, and don't build things or do anything that's going to be affecting it. Obviously, you've taken that into consideration, but I mean, I've been working over in Peru lately and driving through Main Street. They have the little speed bumps, which is not a problem, and JJ Hapgood, and it's just a hub, and there are so many people. They just go grab their coffee and they sit outside, and you know, it just one little place can be a hub.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if we could have one.
Have you guys been to Brandon, Vermont recently? You know, they've done a really beautiful job of creating sort of that center space, and they've realigned a state road to do that. So it is possible.
I think that's the issue, is that the vision, you can create a vision and work toward it. And what is it we want? We want our villages to be more people-friendly and not just vehicular traffic speeding through it, 50 miles an hour.
And I told you guys I'm from Shelburne Falls, where they have the Bridge of Flowers there, which used to be, you know, historically a trolley bridge, so they repurposed and planted flowers on. And this year it's been closed because it's getting reconstructed, and everyone, you know, it's missed. And so it's another example of something that was, you know, transit oriented being repurposed into something that's pedestrian focused.
And I think, you know, you have a bridge that's central to your village, and I think thinking about that, you know, in the first meeting, we talked about opportunities and constraints, and a lot of times we see a bridge as a constraint. And is there a way to change our thinking about that and turn it into an opportunity? So, for example, in the town that Taylor lives in, they have a huge event that centers around the current bridge, where they close the bridge down. All of the eateries and restaurants come out, they set out tables on the bridge.
Bridge dinner.
And they have this big, huge bridge dinner. And, you know, maybe it's that when you go to, the bridge gets replaced, you make sure that it's a little wider than it is right now, so that you have, you know, a green space between, or adequate space between the traveled way and the pedestrian walkways. But like, how can you turn that bridge into an opportunity for the town?
Yeah. I also think you can't just stop in time. You have to be a little bit more hopeful and visionary for your town, because otherwise it will die. You know, if you don't plan for the future, just little steps, little things here and there, and then build on that. Business decides to move in, and we have more tax revenue. And I just think that I'm just actually more optimistic and hopeful for the future, as opposed to just putting on the brakes.
Yes, great.
I just remembered that I live up West River Street, and fire department came and it's like, I gotta get going, got boats, because our road was turned into a river, got washed away 2 or 3 times over the years. But we weren't ready, so we climbed up the hill and made it to the bridge, because we heard the church up on the left there, the New Baptist Church, is where the shelter was, and the fire department was there saying, no, that bridge has been moving, we don't trust it. So we ended up at the Londonderry Inn, which turned out to be nice, but the fact that they saw the bridge moving during the flood indicates that maybe it's not so structurally as sound underneath as we thought.
Well, when you think of the truck traffic that goes over that, the weight of those trucks, it's gotta be beating it to death.
Yeah. So,
One last question.
Yeah, it's kind of a comment after Bruce and Nancy, they were commenting on the flood piece of it. And I would just be like really concerned, you know, building the future, which I totally think is wonderful. But in building where it really floods, in both the North Village and South Village, somehow doesn't make any sense to me to have all that money and all that time invested when there are other pieces of property that the town even owns that they could maybe relocate, like a central place that's high up. I remember they had Three Mountain Market, was that what the name of it?
Yeah.
Where-
Dairytown Market?
Dairytown Market, yeah, and that's, they had the senior citizen place, which they still have, the
Smith
Browns bought it, but like someplace high, and then have, you know, really build a central little town there, and then if you needed the wastewater, or if the state provided, you know, the septic and well water or whatever, that would be, to me, a little bit more cost effective rather than, I mean, I don't know if either one of you have ever lived through a flood. Yeah, like, it's pretty traumatic. Yeah, so luckily this summer we haven't had too much rain, but it's so, but just to see friends and houses and property damage and then to put all that energy, even rebuilding or elevating or whatever, definitely maintaining what's there now, make it look beautiful as you can.
Right.
But I mean, to just put all that money into different projects or even wastewater where it just totally can be gone, like look it up north just a few months ago. I mean, they were like, just everything got destroyed. So it's, to me, just maybe more my sensible part.
Yeah.
You know, just, and I appreciate all the work you've done. I think all your plans are
Thank you.
fabulous. So I'm not like being negative, but I'm
No, it's
just, that's
understandable.
just a huge concern.
And I think it's, while we're doing this too, it's kind of a push and pull. It's like, well, what can we do that's in the meantime, you know, or what, you know, you don't want to do nothing for the site, but what, you know, what are small things that you can do to enhance the site and make it better right now versus, you know, completely redoing everything and putting yourself above the flood elevation and, yeah.
Well, that's the advantage to South Londonderry. We do have elevation on both sides of the river, so that there is that potential for
Right.
our town.
so we had one idea that we felt like was too far out there, but it sounds like you guys have a very progressive community, so I think we should throw it out there. And I just want to preface this with,
It's not a progressive community.
okay, well, we've got some pretty progressive thinkers
Yeah,
here.
there are some, but you just need, that's just not true.
Okay, I appreciate you correcting me. This involves a very long-term view at potentially that the town would need to purchase property that is currently held by private landowners. And anytime that we propose something like that, it can ruffle a lot of feathers. So I'm gonna preface this sketch with, this is just a hearing kind of what you're saying about focusing on going up the hill a little bit. We have a thought
Hold on, I gotta reshare this.
that looks at that, but it does involve the town purchasing property from private landowners.
Well, Taylor's doing that. I'm reminded that there is a committee now that I really want to be part of to feed into this, that I haven't had a chance to do yet, of Weston, Londonderry, and Jamaica all working together, because whatever comes from Weston is going to go to Londonderry and then on to Jamaica. So look at the whole region as far as flood abatement goes. And one of the ideas I like is there land adjacent to the bridge that maybe is open, maybe it's private, maybe it's not. If we can buy it or get permits or whatever to lower it a foot or two, so when the water comes down, it has a place to spread out. And there's several places all along that whole run where we can do that.
So, thank you, Bruce. And as already said, this is not, the last set of plans that we showed were a little bit more detailed or, considered a little bit further, but this was kind of really just putting pen on paper. So starting from the intersection of, I believe, Crescent and Middletown Road, cutting across the hillside here and coming down to the intersection near the town office here, and then really cutting into the hillside there, creating a streetscape, outdoor spaces, and infilling with buildings along that, and creating a new town center that's much removed from the flood issues. Yeah.
So this provides connectivity between, or the thought was you have the town hall on Middletown Road and you have the town offices, and there's not a strong or easy connectivity between those right now. And so the thought process was, well, what if you made a new connection between those two town properties? It is very steep in this area, so there would need to be retaining walls. There's a lot of site work. You would have property acquisition costs that would probably take a very long time to negotiate and make happen. But this is creating a whole new town center, vertically and horizontally removed from the floodway.
Local traffic on the road. Yes.
To be truthful, this makes a lot more sense to me than
Okay.
and I would approve this other than most of your other comments.
Okay.
We got two. Yes. Sir.
Yeah, I think at the risk of ruffling feathers, I agree, Pete, this is definitely the most sensible plot you've done. And I'd even given a note to somebody earlier, is there any way to hook Crescent Street up to where the town offices are? And I don't know whether it's Goodyear or whoever else that owns that property, but cheaper, this is solving the problem.
And it's not that steep, really, with that elevation.
Well, that's the kind of the thought is you're going up Middletown Road, gaining some elevation, and then crossing.
And it's pretty flat all the way across.
Yeah, it is until you get into the widths that you need for the road, the parking, the buildings, everything from that, and then you don't really want to be hemmed in on the bank. Yes, in the
I
back.
had a question on historical. Was there a road back there, or maybe further down?
I think we heard something about there used to be a trail back in there.
Yeah.
I think there's a right-of-way across one of those properties that's sort of like where the road that we're showing starts, but it doesn't continue all the way across.
Because there's the road that comes from the town office and then kind of dead ends, but it's almost a quarter of the way. Connect with that. Yeah,
So just to clarify,
As we start acquiring properties.
is that Middletown
Kind of
Road?
solo.
Middletown's right here, Crescent, the main street, and then cutting over, and then the old town office, not town hall, town office is right off page here.
And what's the wiggly one in the middle?
This, I was looking at some kind of connection down to the main street, whether that be vehicular or pedestrian. Not sure yet, but some kind of connection from this road down. And potentially pedestrian, but.
So something to consider is you do have historic buildings in the current village center. And so, if you guys are gonna create a new village center, you would wanna think about, are there historic buildings that you either wanna leave in their current location, or would you be interested in potentially relocating the historic buildings to the new town center, village center? Again, that's very costly, but it can be done.
Well, it's better than losing them to flood. If you want to preserve.
We don't have too many left.
We don't, we lost so many buildings.
Well, most of them burned down. The ones that were along the river and.
Burned or relocated when they redid the bridge. There were 4 along Route 11 in the north.
Right, I'm just talking about South Londonderry City. But, the old Peabody House, the Woody's Cracker Barrel, they all burnt down.
Is there a reason why when you come across the hill you don't plug into the dead end street?
There's a house right there.
Okay.
Oh, small issue.
So
I mean, if you're talking about acquiring private property, perhaps that's something you could acquire and we could move the connection point there, but that was why we didn't
It
do
builds
that.
on a town center if you have an additional street anyway, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Where are you talking about?
So he's right, sorry, this is a little bit faded out, but right in
That's
here.
the street up
So there's
there.
the town office right here, and there's
Yeah.
a dead end street right
Oh,
there.
oh, I see.
And so kind of just,
Oh,
Yeah, there's sort of a
I see.
white,
You can see it.
a white square that's,
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's
the
someone's
end.
house. Yeah.
Just curious.
yeah, I think that's a great thought.
Right.
But we, you know, the benefits of this, besides the flood, are that you're also not dealing with any of the traffic, because you're essentially just doing local traffic only here now.
Yeah. You don't have the truck traffic through your town center anymore.
You're also gonna have great views from up there too. You know, you elevate it just enough, and then essentially a bunch of benching in there. And, you know, one of the comments that we heard was that the town now has kind of like a lack of like arrival when you come in. And there was an old building that was, I can't remember exactly which one they were talking about, up on the hill here, that when you were coming down 100, you would kind of see that true sense of arrival into the town. And so with this, you would also have a strong sense of that pulling in here.
What was the church steeple?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Also, you have a, it's not just a straight shot through and that's it. It's an interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
look you've got. Now, would it trouble you if some of us voted for?
You can vote for whatever you want.
It doesn't bug me too much.
We were just, I mean, proposing work on private property does ruffle a lot of feathers, which is why we were very
We kind of
reluctant
tiptoe into that sometimes.
to propose this.
But
Yeah.
again, it's conceptual.
It's got us in
It
the past.
doesn't look like you're decimating houses, it's just
No.
property.
The library has a lot of land above that's close to that road,
Yep.
that's curving over to the right.
Well, and I think, you know,
Hiking trail there
it was
too.
actually
Yeah.
during one of our first community meetings, and I believe the gentleman's last name was Peabody, was talking about why don't you look into our land up here as development.
We could put housing up there.
Yeah.
We'll look right in the back.
This is maybe Plan 5, no, I'm just kidding. But I was just asking Patty about up near where the, is it Pingree Park? Not Pingree,
Proudy
Park.
and Hearthstone.
Yeah,
areas.
Proudy, Hearthstone, where Grandma Miller's is, the tennis center. That already seems like almost a little bit of a hub already. And then there seems like there's quite a bit of land around there. So and they're putting the wastewater right there, so wouldn't that be a really kind of a good idea too?
I know a large
possible
portion
idea.
of that property is in the floodplain,
Not down there.
No,
up
the
where-
tennis.
where
The tennis
the Proudy
court.
property is,
Yeah.
yes.
No, where
Well-
Grandma Miller's.
Well, yeah, where Grandma Miller's is, but across the street, which is
Yeah.
town-owned property, there's that upper part and then there's the lower part,
Right, but I was
which
not
is the majority
thinking
of the
where the
property.
road is already, where Grandma Miller's is, and
And then on the right, just
yeah,
above.
and the tennis.
Where Grandma Miller's is, yeah.
Can you
Yeah,
open up the
there's-
space?
I mean, it's already possible.
Yeah.
I can just bring it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like, well,
We have like gravel.
south
these.
and
You
north
ever see them?
have
Grab
a
one of
center
these.
of town together.
Yeah, that would.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea is to not get people in their cars to go to the. It consolidates both villages in one place.
Oh, good idea. That would be, instead of each separate town, I mean, it's like doubling the expenses of whatever they're trying to do. And you don't want to be having all the stores and everything that are in the North Village.
Yeah.
Good, awesome, so this
Yeah.
is saving.
Okay, these ones just turn sideways so we can fit them all on there. Well, that should be a little more space fit. Maybe.
Do you have an 11 by 17 as
But
your
I think we
sketch?
should,
Yeah.
we should have a foundation for that line.
I think we
We
can
got one.
do that.
We got one.
No, we have to do it.
Okay, that's fine. Oh, yeah.
No, that's not.
This doesn't have that.
No, it's on that.
Oh, 3A, oh, that's that, yeah.
I mean, since we're making.
Oh, that's that.
Our new town.
So we're gonna
Can
do
we-
the voting
yeah,
now,
okay.
if you're willing to hang out and give us some votes on the different options.
So,
Over here.
yeah,
Push that off.
Oh, you gotta put that one
yeah,
out too.
I'll put this one over here. So, if you guys, anyone wants to vote, feel free. We want to do the green is your favorite.
You
And
get one of those.
the orange, take as many as you want. They're things that you like on,
So maybe
on
you'd
any of them.
say like the bridge, or maybe it's the intersection, or maybe it's the walking pathways, but put orange dots on the things that you like from each of the different plans. So one green, as many orange as you want. We've got 5 plans up here, including the secret sketch. Oh, you do have a secret sketch?
I'm a Gemini, I can't have one.
Well, the orange is,
I need the orange.
you do want green though too, right?
So,
Yeah, someone could, but.
I don't wanna, I like this, but I don't wanna ignore what's already there.
we're doing a lot of flood mitigation on the existing buildings, but it was more of a passive, one permanent bucket, green spaces. So it wouldn't be throwing parking lots.
Is your favorite plan? And then
I mean, there are gonna be
one of these two. Yes, yep. Yeah, so the green is your favorite plant, and the orange, you get as many of the orange ones as you want, and that's anything that on the drawings that you like.
Where's the one where we're gonna remove the fire station?
Right here.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
One question.
Yep, let me walk over.
On this one,
Yeah.
wouldn't this be Smart Grid? I always thought
free to
Crescent
vote
State
in the
was
chat.
between the church
Like,
and
I
Solo
proposed
and everything
chat.
else. Would this be further south as well? I know that
Yeah.
coming out here is an issue.
Kind of a nightmare, right? So you're talking to change the intersection down here?
Well, yeah, however you need to do it so that it makes sense here, or a turnaround, or maybe even a loop or something. But
Yeah.
you already have a restaurant here and a church here, and, if that could be sort of a continuation.
Right, I see what you're saying, yeah. And I think that's something that we can think about. We did walk down here and, we looked at actually developing this area down here as part of this plan. But the way, it's really tight, and then you got that steep bank right there too, so we were kind of running into some issues there. We're making that work, but it's something that we can look into further. This was just a really quick, kind of like back of the napkin sketch before this meeting.
And I love the idea of all this sort of layered, patios or walkways going up through there.
That's a great idea, thank you.
Taylor?
Yeah?
When you were pointing that out the second time for me, I was painting the camera, so could you kind of point out exactly what this is again? Kind of a little bit slower.
Which part?
The whole thing, just what streets are what's new?
Yeah, so Middletown Road coming up here, and at the intersection of Crescent, we're looking at adding a road that cuts across the side of the hill over to near the town office building.
I mean, people,
And
yeah, exactly.
the thought here was to create a huge center out of the flood area, and somewhere away from vehicular traffic, so you're doing local traffic.
I like that idea. And maybe you do
Thank you.
what you can here.
So this is all new.
With that.
Yep, exactly.
And this is new.
North and
Yep.
south, when?
The other stuff is existing. I was just trying to add the line work for the roads that are there now. But these are new kind of buildings, potentially a plaza space here, some parking, things like that.
And where could we do
Well,
that?
one
Where-
thing on the planning commission we talked about was at Magic,
Is the river on there?
And, I mean, there's a
It's
core
right
property,
here.
I mean,
Or
but
where the Hearthstone.
Yep, right
Yeah,
there.
so this is
Yeah,
West
I think
River
that makes
here.
sense.
Yep, that's the West River Road there. Yep, that's the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the,
but there are
that's
problems
not
with
the depot building. The depot building's here. This is that, what was the name of that?
Construction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wastewater is taking a good
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
No problem.
But that's also a good thing, because then you can have more business or houses or whatever.
Say the
We'll go
Brown
through later.
County for the wastewater,
Yeah.
develop a new village in
Yeah.
between across the street.
Right.
So we're getting a lot of dots on option 2, which is good, but the green dots are here. Orange coming in.
Well, I use my green dot elsewhere, so you don't have to be fair.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this is the new bridge.
Well, 2 of these are new bridges.
New bridge.
We looked at pushing one way up the river here, and then we also looked at this one, which was kind of just locating it near where the original one is.
yeah, I sort of like that.
Right there or right there?
River there.
This one, where exactly is this?
I know.
Down that hill.
Huge change for them.
And of course, on these, you didn't really do the sidewalk thing, but it was assumed that that.
Yeah, it's implied. Yeah, we're kind of this one was kind of looking at the
Just
bigger.
that, the bridge
Yeah,
issue.
exactly.
Yeah.
And seeing what that would look like. What was it?
This is Crescent, so it connects there.
So while we're not showing it though, on the section of this one,
Yeah.
and this one, that's where we have the compensatory storage, and then there is pedestrian
Yeah.
space on those as well.
So I like that compensatory storage
Yeah.
thing.
Did you guys think the sections were helpful when we were going through these? The view of the sections, kind of a slice, okay. Being able to look at things vertically. Exactly.
And I even talked to some police when after the town meeting.
You can. A lot of the time though,
He said, oh, sure, we'll take care of it.
it's kind of a
What are the problems?
I think there's a combination of all these sort of mitigation efforts with maybe not raising it 3 feet, but raising it 1.5 feet.
and then flood proofing it. But
And
I
then
think
flood-proofing.
what I was trying to hit was that if you're doing new construction or something like that, they're going to want to have you
Right.
build it above
Definitely.
them.
Definitely.
And then the existing
But
buildings
it's a
you
shame
try
for the
to.
post office. It would be nice if the post office didn't flood, wouldn't it?
I know. The post office is a piece of it
All
is
right.
within the.
I'm gonna go there.
Okay.
They want to move anyway, it's an old building.
Yeah. Right.
They've been looking for a space and haven't found one.
Okay.
So that's,
Right, because they rent that out, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And the rest of the building is just vacant right now.
Right. All right.
There used to be a hairdresser in that back middle space.
Yeah.
And
Just,
It's
I'm not
got
sure
some
what
nice
upstairs.
yeah.
Okay.
architectural
Yeah,
things
I
in
know.
there, you know? Have you been inside?
Not upstairs.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. I think maybe once a long time
Some
ago.
of these efforts, but have maybe this as your, you could be working on that, and this wouldn't go, all the stuff you do here wouldn't go away, maybe.
Well, that's what I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Can you do that and add
Well, the
some of
key,
this?
the key is the stone study for the river and how how we solve this problem.
Yeah, the river
Yeah,
has
we
to be
need more
addressed.
information.
Yeah.
For like, okay, what kind of bridge and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And I think and then how does that go with some of the things from the North Londonderry and the plans that were proposed, those
There's
things?
lack of vision in the decision
Maybe we
that
could
got
revisit
shelved.
all that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like
now that we have
both
the
North and
roads.
South Town should work together
Yeah, it's all one
to a
town.
comprehensive, plan.
Along with Weston Jamaica and Londonderry.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole thing.
Yep.
So, a couple of people have been expressing the thought that is really great, but
Yeah.
that a lot of this can still be done.
Okay.
In combination with that, maybe that's
Right.
gonna take a long time to do. But this and then building up you know, some of these
Yeah.
hillsides. Sort of, you need a developer to do that, right?
Well,
Or somebody with a lot of bucks.
Still
You need an
have this
attorney,
parking
but
and
yeah.
all, right?
Yeah.
And still have the road going
Yeah.
Yeah,
across
it's a little
and
bit higher
down
up,
would
so
be-
it would kind of be, you know, off page a bit here, but you would be able to have some kind of connections down.
Yeah, and then that could be parking for like the recreational.
All the
Right.
recreational
Like
stuff,
this.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is option one, I just want to see if I can do it.
Yeah,
Just get one green dot, but we were saying that.
that's your favorite plan for the green dot, and then the orange is as many, you use as many as you want on things that you like for throughout the plans. Like say you like the idea of the pedestrian bridge, put a dot there, and as many as you like.
Was there any
Well, if
way,
you make a new bridge, you can make a pedestrian lane
That's true.
on the new bridge.
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
is there any way to delineate where the floodplain, floodway, and are
Oh, we
on
should
the
draw some
plan?
lines on
Just
here.
because
On the
I'm
town.
wondering how much of this
Yeah.
is in the, I think this is all floodplain, and then you get the floodway
We do
Yeah, I'll
that.
show
in your
you.
sections,
We
yeah.
have these maps on the town website.
For the best, for your favorite idea.
I mean, you'd have to, but it would be good to have the overlay
Well, just, it would be nice to be able to see that
on
here,
that,
yeah,
yes,
just
as the
because-
plan. That's a good point.
Because some of these may be out of the floodplain, which you still want to do, I think, you know.
The floodplain is higher than the floodway. The floodway is, I keep getting which one is more.
Well, yeah, I mean, in some cases they overlap, in some cases I don't think they do. The floodway is where the river is likely to go at some future time with erosion and all that kind of stuff, or additional flooding. And then the floodplain is where
Yeah.
it spreads out to, because you can build in the floodplain, but you can't build in the floodway.
Right, because you can't
In the
build
building-
in the river, but you can
Yeah,
build-
in the floodplain, you have to be that 2 feet above
Right,
the,
yeah.
One of those V-Trans.
BFE. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's just so many
Give me 1 second, I got
that are in
map that we did.
We're still broadcasting,
Okay.
so we're still recording.
Good.
So it's still part of the meeting, so I just
Thank you.
eavesdropping.
You're welcome.
Do you have
I
any
agree.
comments about what you're hearing?
I'm glad we had so many people come out tonight. Great to see the community engaged. I hope that the rest of the community continues to engage in this process, and we look forward to finishing up the master plan and bringing it back to the select board.
There was talk about, Helena was talking about combining what was done for the North Village with the South and us working together somehow more.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I think we will go back to the office and take the feedback that we heard today and probably pull out that North Londonderry master plan and see if there is an opportunity to maybe knit these together in some way. And obviously try to produce a plan that reflects the feedback that we've heard tonight.
Because people kind of like objected to the idea, just felt it was like too high in the sky to raise roads and change Route 100 and all that kind of stuff. You know, with Emmett's idea of, you know, needing the grant, it's possible, but that's way down the line.
Yeah, these take a long time to implement and they don't happen all at once. They come piecemeal, you know, you're able to do one little piece at a time. And if the town chooses to focus on something that is really significantly, you know, really changing the current infrastructure, that's going to take a lot of time to implement if that's what the community chooses to do.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
On the one plan, you only get one green.
Yeah, I know.
So on the one plan, you like overall.
yeah, well, it's kind of a mixed.
I like that, but with this. This
Yeah, it's
happening
kind of a
first,
mix
with that in the future.
Yeah. It's a tough one because
It's hard because this is just.
it's a mix between what
day by day.
You can do sooner than later.
Yeah.
But it is one of
Because
those
that one, I think,
structures that,
eventually,
like
that would
other
be the
structures
best.
further
Yeah.
up that.
Well, that's why I put my green on that.
What's
But I'm
this?
thinking that with, I mean, that's gonna take
anything with the
longer, but
gold
there's
is
so many
infill.
little projects here, doables, deliverables, that you can,
And this is the only one I like because the bridge is further down where it's maybe not such a choke.
is this new building, and see, up on the
Infill.
hill,
Infill.
and up here you could do,
Do they need more parking, or you're proposing eliminating this versus making it more formalized, I think?
Yeah, it's already all there.
Okay.
All I can see is all the people, kids and pickup signs.
Okay, this was the flood map.
Oh, great.
From the last one where you can, hard to see here, but the dashed, you know, with the bars, that's the floodway. And then, so you can.
This is the floodway, wherever
Yeah,
there's
exactly,
a
where the
bar.
red
Okay.
bars are.
Okay.
And so, and then the 100-year is this red line here that kind of cuts into the.
so it doesn't really get to those buildings. So it
Sorry,
doesn't,
hold on.
Oh.
Let me re-say that again. Been a little while since I looked at this one. This one is the path of the river itself.
the black line.
The red is the floodway, and this light gray is the 100-year floodplain. And so what we were talking about with the bridge is how you can notice that before it gets here, it swells, and then it really swells after the bridge. And that's, you know, potentially due to the water being choked. When you choke the water down, when you restrict it, it actually increases the velocity of it. And then so it's actually moving faster coming out on the other side of the bridge. And that's why you get that swelling on both sides. And so that's where our comment came about this thing may not being sized big enough for some of those floods that we're getting.
So this, is this floodplain? This
Yep,
gray?
yeah, exactly. And then up here too.
That's
So
what,
that's why I'd like
So
the
the
idea
floodway
of
is in-
redeveloping some of these.
And so
Yeah,
yeah, and then so the floodway comes after the bridge, really swells, goes on both this side of Main Street and this side of West River Street over here.
So the depot is in jeopardy.
Partially.
but, you know, any sort of building up here and here, all the way up to where the pedestrian bridge is gonna come across, and then some way of getting up and create circulation. Yeah,
Just reconfigured the arch to come right through the middle. I don't know.
that got a lot of bravo.
but- Yeah.
Yeah.
So I live here,
Okay.
and our basement's been flooded several times.
Yeah.
We've moved everything electronic out,
Oh, really?
but the house flooded back in '73.
Yeah.
So whatever this is saying, well, I guess, what's the red here? What's all?
Red is the
what's-
Property line.
Oh, this is all property lines.
right.
So I would say it's not totally accurate because, I mean, we've had several floods and this
Well, your
doesn't really
basement's
indicate
below
floods right there.
grade.
Right. But I mean, the basement flooding can happen regardless of if
Yeah.
it being in the
That's-
floodway or
and
not.
the
That's
water table.
more hydraulic.
We're up high, it was just. from-
Hydrostatic pressure.
But I think this is really encouraging because it shows that,
one with the pedestrian bridge, which I feel like.
I mean, it doesn't even affect those buildings.
The floodway kind of laps though. at
Yeah, the sidewalk now.
But the floodway is where the river may want to go in the future or possibly go with
Yeah.
flooding, erosion and that kind of stuff.
Yep, exactly. That's the natural path it's going to take, and then the floodplain is where it's going to spread to during flooding events.
So when you are working,
Big housing thing, which is great.
do a line that shows the floodplain, floodway.
Okay.
And this is.
And once we get down to kind of more of like one concept as
Yeah.
opposed to 4 or 5,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
easier
It's
for us to
easier.
show that.
Yeah.
That's what
And,
we tried using the section to help illustrate
Yeah.
the typical section through right here. You know, that's what it looks like there. Kind of where the worst of it is.
and even though the really,
I was
Either way, you can-
trying to get a, you know, so I think where I nudged it in was right here, so I could get kind of a loop coming up
yeah,
like that. This, we were trying to tiptoe a little bit and not try to impact too many private properties. Although this one would be as well, but however not right in their front yard. But this would be this orientation would make the most sense. Coming up like this and then up to this dead end street here.
Conceptual, so you can-
Yeah.
Just conceptual, we can point to anything.
Exactly.
Conceptual.
That is, I really like that idea.
Almost looks like Bath, England, right?
Yeah. You're right, the crescent.
So just need to connect over. We're gonna
Yeah,
close
right.
this out.
Yep.
We're still broadcasting, we're still recording.
Okay.
Do you have any comments about how the evening went?
I think it was great. We had a nice turnout, especially since we had the gap this summer, taking the time off, and I think we got to hear a lot of people's opinions. We're gonna go back, tally up the votes, and then kind of weave together a plan based on everyone's comments, and then go from there. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, the North Londonderry.
Okay,
No problem. Have a
we're
good day.
signing off.
Because I was gonna say, once again, what you said, but you said it much more eloquently, I would have, what was depth in it?
About